Welcome to Voices of the Industry, a podcast by the AI Localization think tank, which aims to bring diverse voices from our industry to engage in the conversation about how AI is impacting what we do. Today, we have a special guest, Olga Stokowiec. Olga, I'll turn it over to you directly. Please introduce yourself and what you do.
Thanks, Gabriel. My name is Olga. I am a localization program manager at Maxon. So I support the localization need of the company creating software for visual artists, 3D artists, animation, VFX, all the cool things. And so I am driving the localization initiative, doing the file flow between the teams and orchestrating all that and ensuring that processes work smoothly, that the timelines are met, and everyone is happy, particularly our users accessing content and products in their native languages. And yeah, when I think about it, I'm really living the localization life in and outside of work. I'm surrounded by languages. My native language is Polish. I speak Polish to my dog and my friends, but on a daily basis, I feel like, unfortunately, more to my dog than my friends. Sorry about that. I work in English and my home language is English now, but I live in Germany, so I speak German on the streets, in the park, in shops, doing administrative work. So really, languages are everywhere.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. There's a reason why I extended the invitation for you to hop on board here, and we'll get to that in a second. But I do have a favorite icebreaker type of question because it's very illuminating, and I tend to learn a lot from it. And that question is, what excites you, Olga?
I love that question because actually not that many people ask that question. Yeah, and when I think about it, there are so many things, both professionally and like outside of work. So let's start with professionally. Professionally, what excites me is good localization. And I think that just comes from my upbringing and growing up with localized movies, localized content. And yeah, most of the international culture that I've been consuming as a young person, as a kid, was in Polish. So the localization has always been there. I think I still know most of the dialogues from the Polish version of Shrek by heart. It's been such a great localization with so many just cultural and political nuances that wouldn't be caught by non-Polish audiences and also that couldn't be found in the American original. The Polish localization has always been incredible. The Polish dubbing and voiceover of the animated movies, that's always been just really supreme quality. Also, I've been singing all the Let It Go versions in all the languages I know. So from Frozen, the Polish, the Italian, the Russian. So that's always been, I have strong opinions about the localized versions of animated movies and songs and musicals. So that's what excites me. Also, good user experience excites me. So I've spent so many years interacting with software, both professionally and non-professionally. So if software, to quote the book, doesn't make me think and is smooth and no fluff and the copy is good, that's always very exciting to interact with that. And non-professionally, sport and music excite me. I think I do cycling and I lift weights and I do some swimming and I practice trumpet. So I think those things excite me because they ground me. I don't know, these seem like two opposites, but they ground me because they're the reminder of garbage in, garbage out. Like those things you can't fake your way to the top. You can't fake an accomplishment in sports or in music. You have to put in the effort, you have to put in the work. And I think this is a great way to build discipline and resilience and learn to just keep going no matter what. And yeah, so these are the things that excite me outside of work.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So this conversation, we're getting into the weeds of it now, but it's coming on the heels of a presentation you did in June at Local in Malmö in Sweden. I personally thought it was one of the standouts of the conference. I don't know what was your take directly from the stage, but for those who haven't been able to go to the conference, We'll link to Olga's post on LinkedIn that recaps everything that she said. But Olga, in your own words and unrehearsed as these things go, what was it about, and what is your main takeaway or proposition that you presented to the audience?
Thanks. So, what I was talking about in Malmo was that the development of localization, together with the AI revolution or evolution, however we call it, will follow the sort of normal distribution curve, where the majority of our operations of everything localization, whether we talk from the process standpoint or even just translation standpoint, that will be covered, orchestrated, automated by AI. And I called this the pop localization, so localization for the masses, where the good enough average localization meets the requirements and is keeping the users happy, but also doesn't cost a lot of money, is time efficient, etc. Then the sort of lower end of the worst end of the normal distribution curve, that would be the businesses that will use AI mindlessly without understanding their use cases, without understanding how AI even works and being able to think critically about it. And my argument is that those businesses will perish because we are also learning to understand what is for tone deaf generic AI generated content, and no one will want to buy things that are localized this way. So those businesses will drive themselves into extinction. And then on the other side of the normal distribution curve, we will have human translation as a luxury good. Because I truly think that, as it happens with so many things, music or fashion or cooking, those people who are niche specialists, they will really deliver the value that is on the luxury level, and people will want to the people will want to pay for this, like people who have budget to pay for this, people who want to deliver something exceptional will want to pay for those human translators who are top of the class specialists in their field.
Mm-hmm. What you mentioned mirrors very well a recent article that we published in the Localization think tank. And in response to a question we received from our readers, the question was, will we ever run out of linguists? It sounds like you're suggesting that no, we won't. And indeed, that was the consensus across the board in our group when responding to that question. But what would you say to this? How do you tie this together? Your sort of vision of the future with the sort of luxury segment of localization that still will require humans will be firmly at the center of it. So yeah, what do you think?
First of all, I think we will not run out of linguists, so I agree with that. If anything, I think that we might have a surplus of linguists because, as I said, a lot of the workflows will be automated. Maybe not every content type requires the same attention and the same quality. So not everything has to be translated by humans, or not everything requires the human in the loop, even in like maybe quality evaluation. So in that sense, some of the linguists will be in surplus. And without sugarcoating, I think we do have to transform our skill sets, and we have to transform what we do and how we approach the multilingual content so that we can keep doing what we love without sacrificing ourselves in the process, of sacrificing our income. And I think that not everyone will be able to keep the translation jobs, just or not in the current shape and form. So the super niche artisanal translations, that the demand for those will be much lower, as it so happens with luxury goods. And the translators who are performing more, I don't know, generic or more in demand mass tasks, they will have to evolve into various, I don't know, content roles, content supporters, content providers, maybe just reviewers. It all depends on the
Good. It brings us to a different question I had for you, and one that I find, on one hand, intriguing for me, but also highly frustrating. And that's just to contextualize this for everyone watching this episode. for the past few years, I've been working with people like yourself, Olga, and your peers on the buyer side. And a recurring observation I had is there's very little insight into how difficult or easy this whole AI craze is for you and your peers, Olga. So in a way, you're stuck in between the rock and a hard place, the order coming down, and that you need to sort out AI yesterday, but also you're still human and that you have empathy for fellow humans, right? And still want to continue working with them. So they wanted to use this opportunity to try and lift the lid a little, so to speak. Can you give us a glimpse into sort of what your reality looks like on the buyer side and trying to make sense of this whole AI thing?
That's a big question and a big answer. So I think, well, following the shortage and surplus conversation, I think there is a surplus of innovation that I'm afraid the buyers are not able to consume, or at least not able to consume right away. There is so much happening in the localization industry. And if you go to localization meetups or conferences, you will see that the rooms are buzzing and everyone is developing something and everyone is exploring, and there are new tools and new solutions and new quality frameworks, and everyone is trying to bite a chunk of the AI craze for themselves. And I think that is great, but as on the buyer side, we are not able to implement everything right away. And I also am participating in those meetups and conferences, and then I come back and I have to somehow be able to marry the innovation drive and eagerness with the reality of operating within corporate structures where if we want to implement something, we have to go through legal, compliance, risk assessments, budget assessments, and those are things that are usually planned way in advance or take their time. So we are not able to apply everything right away. And even if I do have golden retriever level of enthusiasm for some things, and I would love to try it out and just have a localization playground, I also have to think about how to communicate that to the stakeholders, how to get their buy-in. Will that really be impactful? Or like, how can I pilot this solution so that we can implement it gradually? And that takes time, which that might come off as resistant or not really being open to it. But I think it really just comes from the fact that localization is just one of the many moving parts in whichever companies we operate in. And most of the stakeholders usually don't have localization background. And this is just one of the many value drivers. Competing for attention, resources, budget is also part of the process. And that's why we might appear slow on the buyer side.
Good, thank you. Good as in not necessarily a value judgment on what you say. We'll leave that to everyone on their own, but thank you for sharing that. If only more people would be so candid as you are. Thank you. I want to touch on something that, and I'm going to make a sweeping statement that probably a lot of us or everyone has a sort of opinion by now on AI, or I would hope they have an opinion on AI, and it can fluctuate from the very, very negative to very positive or hopeful, or however we deem to label it. And so I wanted to ask you, Olga, where do you land on that spectrum of hopeful versus bleak, and what does the future hold for us in this industry?
I think I'm closer to hopeful, or I want to be closer to hopeful. I hope I'm not being delusional in that, and it's not like gaslighting myself into hopefulness. But I really think I think innovation is important, and I understand also the urgency and the importance of just making room for innovation. And I think AI will not sweep us away from the face of Mother Earth. And that comes also from reading a lot of history books or like listening to podcasts or watching documentaries. And if you consume a lot of this sort of, I don't want to call it content, but information, knowledge, you start seeing the patterns. And the pattern is that humanity is more resilient than we think we are, and we usually go through challenges better than we think we are, with the gift of the hindsight particularly, and we bounce back quicker. Even the COVID pandemic showed that, right? We were thinking, oh, we will never be the same. Stadium concerts, not gonna happen. And then 2, 3 years later, we have Taylor Swift and Beyonce filling the stadiums all over the world, and no one even remembers that we were wearing masks a few months back. So I think in the long run, the AI craze will change and will challenge us and will change how we think and how we work. And we will have to face maybe dangers that we're not even aware of, or we will have to fix leaky laws that maybe now we don't even know that we need them. But ultimately, I think we will come out of this AI revolution that is happening now stronger, with more knowledge, with more resources, with more tools, and hopefully just better ways to operate our businesses. So I hope this approach is not delusional, and I hope that there is some sense in that. And yeah, I really want to be on the hopeful side, because if we resist the change, what's the point of that? The change is going to come anyway, so we can be bitter about it, or we can make the most of it.
Thank you. I'll veer off track here for a second. I do have a question that sort of spontaneously occurred to me, so you'll pardon me for that, but hopefully. But I was thinking, you mentioned the benefit of hindsight, right? Like how we were able to look back, and some of the tunnel vision that we had a few years ago is now starting to make sense. And I suspect a lot of that, as you say, will happen with AI too, is it's only further down the line that we'll be able to make sense of our decisions and our reactions. The question was to people, or rather not to people, but to yourself. If you had the opportunity to talk to yourself a few years back, if there was time travel, would you give yourself a piece of advice? What would that be?
That's a great question. What would I say to myself from 5 years ago? From 5 years ago, I was a baby localization person, still working in Trados and MemoQ, and being in a very different place than I am now. I think I would say to myself, like, do not ignore the importance of technical literacy and technical skills. You don't have to be a software engineer. You don't have to be a machine learning specialist, but be curious, be critical, and don't be afraid of those seemingly difficult topics. Just read about it, talk to people, watch some podcasts, because even if you are not coding yourself, even if you are not developing and training models yourself, it's important to be discerning, and it's important to have the context and have the knowledge that is super, super useful to just have informed conversations and be a conversation partner to different business stakeholders, or even just people in the free time. And if you're in the localization bubble or translation bubble, I, for example, used to hear a lot, oh, I'm not a technical person. I went into humanities so that I don't have to deal with that. This is horrible. And I think this is just, we can do better. And I don't think there is a direct opposition between being in humanities and being a technical person. And I think those skills can come together. So yeah, if I was talking to myself from 5 years ago, I would say don't be afraid and learn technical stuff as well, because this is an important person for you to be a well-rounded professional.
Good, thank you. That was an impromptu looking back, hypothetical time travel question. The looking forward question, and that's really the one for the road here, is what's next on the roadmap for you? What does Olga do next?
So many things. So I really look forward to everything I'm doing and building at Maxon, and to the next steps and next things that we will be releasing and languages we will be supporting. So I'm really looking forward to everything that is happening on that front. Then Lock World in Malmo was such a great experience that it definitely made me hungry for more. So I'm looking forward to more localization meetups, more conversations with localization peers, more conferences. And I feel like sometimes the localization departments or even one-person teams can be pretty small or and pretty isolating in the grand business scale. So it's important to be in touch with the localization community and to learn and exchange and experiment and talk about experimenting and create the space where we can talk. So yeah, I definitely look forward to more to being more inside the localization community and learning and contributing as well where it makes sense and where I can.
Thank you, Olga. Thank you for sharing your perspective. For our viewers, this was another episode of Voices of the Industry by the AI Localization Think Tank. This comes across as a call to action as well. Please follow what Olga does, engage in the conversation. I'm sure that's fine by you, Olga.
Yes, absolutely.
There's more conversations to be had. There's more answers, or rather, first questions to be asked, and then hopefully collective answers to be found. And we'll be right there trying to facilitate that as well. Olga, once more, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a great discussion.
Thank you.